Welcome to Five or Flop, a podcast for the best and worst historical fiction has to offer. I'm your host, Grace.
And I'm Erin, and each week we'll be reading a different historical fiction book to see if they're a five or a flop.
Our theme for season 4 is Reading Rainbow. This week we're checking off a new letter of LGBTQIA+, and we're reading Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides.
Yes, and have really been looking forward to talking about this one, actually.
I did the research for this one, and actually there is a lot of info, so strap in.
Grace went a little ham.
If it turns out that we get through it all really quick, pretend I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, you can go back and cut in the editing. Will it be more unique than the research for Gwen and Art? Because that was one of your top tier researching.
I didn't have to get quite so creative, but I will say I have two very distinct sections that don't touch each other. Okay. And also I went into the author a little more than I normally would.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
All right, what's going on with you this week?
I booked a trip to the beach.
Yes! When? Where?
We're going in a month or two. I'm not going to get too specific so we don't say what week this is.
Okay.
Even though we're really bad about that.
Even though last week you were like, this
it's
weekend's the Pride Parade.
Well, I'm going to the beach with my mother and we will have a great time.
What beach?
Cape Charles.
Where is that?
It's Virginia Beach adjacent area.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not when you're going, quote, to the beach there, it's actually the bay. It's not the ocean.
Yeah. Oh, like the one that we drive to sometimes. Gotcha.
Yes, but you go to Maryland.
Yes.
All right. Well, what about you?
Well, that is exciting. Well, I can't wait to hear all about it. I hope you come back very, very tan. And
Probably
I'm sure
will.
you'll read a lot of trashy romance books while you're there.
Oh, yes.
I am. So, you know how at the time of recording, I have recently gotten back from Ireland?
Yes.
So I get itchy if I'm not trip planning at any given time. So thank God Santiago and I have a cruise coming up over Thanksgiving.
That is so opposite of me. It's not even funny.
So we booked the cruise a while ago, paid for everything, and then we just had to get our flights to Fort Lauderdale. And then we have to book our shore excursions, but that's not until the summer. Mm-hmm. So, but we were looking, we definitely want to go snorkeling. So we're going to Jamaica, Grand Cayman, and then their private, Virgin Voyages private beach thing. Mm-hmm. So at one, we want to go snorkeling, but we don't know which one yet because we have to see all of our options.
Oh, and the depth matters.
The depth matters, the location matters, and also we can't go snorkeling at all three of them because that's too much. But we're going to be doing that. I'm sure Santiago will want to do some paddleboarding or kayaking. But we're really excited. Our cruise is over Thanksgiving, so we are going for an extended length of time so to save on flight costs because it's Saturday to Saturday, but it's so expensive to fly home on that Saturday. So instead our trip is Thursday to Tuesday.
No, that's the same thing. For the beach trip, we booked it not touching a single weekend date.
Yep.
We're going and coming back during the week.
And you save so much money. So and we're staying with Santiago's uncle, so we're staying for free, which is really helpful.
Hell yeah.
So we're really excited for that.
Wonderful. Do you have anything to talk about that you've been reading?
Some stuff that I've finished.
Ooh.
So I mentioned 2 weeks ago that I was reading Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone.
Yes. And you're having a great time.
I had so much fun with it that I read the sequel and the Christmas novella.
Oh.
And by read, I mean listened to while driving.
And it's not even Christmas.
No, it's not. This is actually the second Christmas novella I've read this year, though. And I really enjoyed it.
All right.
But I had a really, really great time with it. The Christmas one was just it was a little worse just because it was, short and whatever. But I still really liked it. The author has some more mystery books, which I do want to read, but they don't have those as audiobooks on Libby. Mm-hmm. So I won't be reading those just yet, just because the only thing I'm looking to read right now is an audiobook for my commute. So yeah, they were really good, really, really fun. I liked them. I always forget that I like the mystery format where they do the big reveal.
Yeah.
And you see if you can piece together the clues, and I never can do it because I don't pay enough attention.
I was going to say, you might not guess because we're so cerebral and intelligent on the podcast, but when reading a mystery book, I am so easy to trick. Because I would like to be surprised.
I think that, I let myself play into it too.
Yeah, I don't want to figure it out. I want you to tell me.
Yeah. So it's more fun for me that way. I've had a lot of fun. I've rated them all. I've rated the first 2 5 stars and then the Christmas one 4 stars.
Okay.
And, were they 5-star? Would Grace, if they were a pod book, have given them a 5? No. But do I enjoy them? Yes, they were fun.
Well, hey, I will definitely need some fun coming up because after my saga reading The Power Broker, I got really behind on pod books. So I actually don't have anything specific to bring up that I can talk about because I've just been reading pod books.
Yeah, you like just finished Middlesex, right?
I
Well,
finished
you
it,
had read it before though.
yes, which we can get to once. Why don't I just dive into the synopsis so we can get
You
into
know
all
what?
of
Good
that?
time, yeah.
All right. I was born twice. First as a baby girl on a remarkably smogless Detroit day of January 1960, and then again as a teenage boy in an emergency room near Petoskey, Michigan in August of 1974. My birth certificate lists my name as Calliope Helen Stefanides. My most recent driver's license records my first name simply as Cal. So begins the breathtaking story of Calliope Stefanides and three generations of the Greek-American Stefanides family, who travel from a tiny village overlooking Mount Olympus in Asia Minor to Prohibition-era Detroit, witnessing its glory days as the Motor City and the race riots of 1967 before they move out to the tree-lined streets of suburban Grosse Pointe, Michigan. To understand why Calliope is not like other girls, she has to uncover a guilty family secret and the astonishing genetic history that turns Callie into Cal, one of the most audacious and wondrous narrators in contemporary fiction. Lyrical and thrilling, Jeffrey Eugenides' Middlesex is an exhilarating reinvention of the American epic.
Exhilarating reinvention of the American epic. What a great way to describe this book.
Oh, yeah. When I was doing my research into the book and the author, the term great American novel got thrown around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this has reached like the pinnacle of that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's relatively recent in terms of its publication. And also it's hard to unseat, I think, Huckleberry Finn and Great Gatsby are the two that people point to say great American novel.
Yeah.
But, you know.
But if we check back in like 50 years.
Maybe something will change.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Jeffrey Eugenides.
Great.
Yes. Jeffrey Eugenides, like Cal Stefanides, was born in Detroit in 1960. His father is Greek and his mother is Irish English. So I texted Aaron. I was like, he's so us.
He's just like us.
Yes, I am also half Greek, in case the listeners were wondering. He studied creative writing at Brown and Stanford and then moved to Brooklyn and started his writing career. He was there in 1993 when his first book was published, which is The Virgin Suicides. The movie version of that book, directed by Sofia Coppola, starring Kirsten Dunst, came out in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And then he published Middlesex in 2002. It won the Pulitzer. We are always talking about that. And this week we remember. And Middlesex is actually also part of Oprah's Book Club, which I think is fun.
Okay.
It won some other awards that were more prestigious than being in Oprah's Book Club. But I just feel like that's such like it was a cultural moment to be in Oprah's Book Club.
And like, you're not going to top the Pulitzer, so why are we going to list out other awards?
Yeah. I also watched a brief little like 1-minute interview clip of him on some other talk show to get the pronunciation of his name and his characters correct. And the guy was saying, it was like a really loaded question. It was like, was it annoying for you to be part of Oprah's Book Club and get a bunch of like Philistines who didn't understand your book reading it? And he was like, no, it was nice to be in Oprah's Book Club.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. So his third book, The Marriage Plot, came out in 2011. Those are all of his novels. And he published a short story collection in 2017 called Fresh Complaint. Mm-hmm. And he is currently a writing professor at NYU.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So it is pointed out a lot. There are a lot of similarities between Jeffrey Eugenides and Cal Stefanides, his main character. I've listed some of them out here. They come from Greek heritage and they were born in Detroit in 1960. They moved out in their childhood to Grosse Pointe to attend an affluent private school. After that, in their adulthood, they lived in Berlin, and Jeffrey Eugenides married a Japanese woman. Cal gets into a relationship with a Japanese woman. Their grandparents were silk workers, both of them. There is one distinction that they do not share, which we'll talk about later. But the main difference is that Jeffrey Eugenides is not intersex and Cal is. He said that he had all of these other similarities in there to ground the book more in reality because he was writing a character that was so different from himself. But his inspirations for writing Middlesex about an intersex character are the Greek figure of Tiresias, who lived as both a man and a woman and who is mentioned in the book. And then also by reading the memoirs of Herculine Barbin, who's a 19th century French intersex person, one of the most famous historical intersex figures. And he was disappointed by the emotional anatomical information that he received in that memoir.
Oh, interesting.
So he wanted to write his own version.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting.
So that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Were you familiar at all with Mr. Eugenides or any of his work before?
I mean, I've heard of this one and The Virgin Suicides. I had not read either one. I had not seen the movie, anything like that.
I was like, when typing out my thing, I was like, oh yeah, I've read those 2 books and I've seen the movie. And then I realized I've never seen that movie. That just seems like something I would do.
Yeah, that does seem like a movie you would have seen.
Yeah, because in my head, I was like, Middlesex is the one that's kind of more known in like literary circles.
Yeah.
And The Virgin Suicides is very prominent amongst like teenage girl circles.
Mm-hmm.
Like people are obsessed with that.
And we have famously been part of those circles.
Famously overlap. I have read The Virgin Suicides. It's been a long time. And I read Middlesex. I think this is the 3rd time that I've read Middlesex.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I read it in high school. Actually, when I was a sophomore in high school, my English teacher had this project for the last half of the year when he said, like, you basically can just read any book you want that has won any of these awards. Oh. And then you just, like, every week he assigned a project. So you got to pick your own stuff, which was fun.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so I read Middlesex for that. And then I still have my same copy of it from then. So I think I picked it up,
Yeah.
Maybe in college and then now.
All right. Well, I love that.
I have not read The Marriage Plot. I think it's no one's favorite Eugenides book. I hate to say that because I'm sure he worked very hard on it.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I think when you just have 2 that have, like, outsold.
He kind of knocked it out of the park not too early. Pretty early.
Yeah. It's hard to make, even if it would have been someone else's best book ever, like, it's hard to compare,
Yeah. So let's do the disclaimer. Erin, would you like to do it? Because you always do it, and the one time I did it, I messed it up.
Our judgment, well, we have forgotten several weeks, but anyways, our judgments come based on the book and characters within the book rather than any real historical figures they may have been based on, or, those parts of Jeffrey that do overlap with Cal,
It's not about him.
It's not about him. And spoilers ahead, of course.
All right. There's so much to talk about, I feel like it's hard to know where to start.
Yes. Should we give kind of like a brief overview of like what happens?
Yeah.
I think for like the 5th week in a row, I don't think this is going to be one where we go like in detail with the plot the whole way through, but I think we need to hit on the major points.
Yeah. So this is told from Cal's perspective. It's presented like a memoir that Cal is writing about himself.
Yes.
But it's very much a generational story. So the long and short of it is that it's kind of showing you the evolution of this Greek American family and how their interfamilial relationships resulted in Cal being born intersex, and then also with Cal's life kind of ending up the way that it did in the lead up to them finding out that they're intersex.
Yes.
And that starts with Cal's grandparents.
Yes.
Lefty and Desdemona.
Which a second character named Lefty has hit the podcast.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, but if you remember, we had a Lefty and Bud Not Buddy. But anyways, continue.
The big thing about Lefty and Desdemona is that they are siblings.
And that is famously what is different with Jeffrey's grandparents.
They were not siblings.
They were not siblings. They were also silk workers, though.
Yes. I just imagine that having this book where so much of it is representative of your own life, and you are Jeffrey Eugenides' grandparents, and you read the book and the grandparents are siblings, you're like, hey.
Yeah, right?
So, but they come over from Greece. They are refugees from the burning of Smyrna, which we'll talk about a little later, which was the end of the conflict between the Greeks and the Turks after World War I.
And this is something, like their trauma surrounding this fire and like their fear of fire is something that comes out, is one of the earliest examples of something that comes up throughout the book and like is a through thread that carries a lot of weight plot-wise.
Yeah. And then also the theme of assimilation, because Desdemona, the grandmother, she never really assimilates.
Yes.
But then the next generation assimilates a little bit more, and then the final generation are fully American, basically. Yes. So Lefty and Desdemona marry. They come to America. They come to Detroit specifically. This book is super, super rooted in Detroit to live with their cousin, whose name is Sor Melina. And then Sor Melina's daughter marries Lefty and Desdemona's son. So they're second cousins.
Yes.
which in and of itself might not be the craziest thing in the world, but they both have this altered chromosome.
Yes.
And that results in Cal having, I wrote it down so I won't mess up the pronunciation of it, 5 alpha reductase 2 deficiency. Which,
okay.
Yeah. So it's super rooted in this exact, there are so many different like ways to be intersex, which we'll get into a little bit later, why that's part of the word intersex even existing at all. But Cal has this specific syndrome that is often found in areas that are sparsely populated where there's a lot of incest and inbreeding.
Yes.
So then that is the result of the story. Cal grows up as Calliope, having a pretty, idyllic American childhood, I guess. There are ups and downs. And then, like it said in the synopsis, when they reach puberty, they kind of discover that they, even though they have been living life as a girl, they realize that they are not a girl like other girls.
Yes, and decide to live as Cal, a man.
Yes. And then you get some flashbacks from the perspective of Cal writing when he's 40 and lives in Germany and is slowly entering this relationship with this woman named Julie.
Where do we even want to start from there?
It's just so hard because there's so much to say.
In a way, it's a lot like Pachinko.
It is a lot like Pachinko in a way.
It is a mammoth generational novel.
Yeah, and it's about going from one country to another. It's about the generations and how they assimilate. The intersex theme is the one that's starkly different.
Should we just kind of go generation by generation?
Let's. So Let's start talking about Lefty and Desdemona.
Yes. So there are a couple things I want to hit on with them. I guess overall they come to the US. Lefty, learns English. He originally works in the Ford factory. That doesn't last very long. And then Desdemona gets a job at a mosque as a silk worker. Lefty at the same time is starting his restaurant.
Yes, he has a speakeasy, which is fun.
Yes, but fronted as a restaurant, of course. And it evolves into a diner once
prohibition is lifted.
Yes, so that's kind of their journey. Something that I really want to touch on. There is one scene that I think might be my favorite individual scene of any podcast book we've read.
That's crazy.
Which is, there is one point where Desdemona is pregnant and she's giving birth. Meanwhile, Lefty and then the cousin's husband, whose name I don't remember.
Jimmy Zismo.
Thank you. I knew it was something
it's fun.
Very iconic and fun.
Yeah.
He is accusing Lefty of, having an affair with Lena, the cousin. And is driving his heavy truck on very fragile ice because they're going to smuggle and bootleg liquor.
Yeah, they're rum running to Canada.
So it's flashing back and forth between Desdemona giving birth and then Lefty, on this frozen lake thinking he's about to die. And the pacing is just so fast back and forth. My heart was beating. I was so nervous for both of them. I had no idea what was going to happen.
It's like Quinn was having her baby in Glee.
It was kind of exactly like that. But it was just so well done. And that one scene I've been thinking about nonstop. Oh, it's so good.
Well, then also, I feel like that is a really specific moment because so much of Desdemona's emotional journey and what informs her actions for the rest of her life is she grew up as a girl thinking that the restrictions about intermarrying, about marrying cousins and siblings and incest was rules from the church.
Yes.
And it's only after she marries Lefty and comes to America that she learns it's because of birth defects. That's why they discourage it.
Yes.
And so she spends the whole book, she prays about that her children will be all right. She undergoes getting her tubes tied so as not to have more children with Lefty. It's implied, it's not implied, it's outright stated that when their marriage starts to kind of fall apart, it's because Desdemona is cold to him because she doesn't want to sleep with him, because she doesn't want to get pregnant and inflict any pain onto her children. What she thinks is that her sin of marrying her brother is going to be paid for by any children that they have.
Yes.
So that part of her giving birth is really crucial. And then she thinks she has 2 children. She has Milton, who ends up being Cal's father. Mm-hmm. And then he has a sister named Zoe. And I just noted that I wanted more of her because she seemed really fun.
Yeah, I liked her.
And we didn't get a lot from her. We just knew that she hated her husband.
Yes.
So that was kind of slay of her. But
who was a priest.
Yeah, we'll get to him.
Yes. And then Milton winds up marrying his cousin.
His second cousin.
And then Desdemona's like, ah, shit.
Yeah, so she thinks that she's safe when her children are born. They look normal. They grow up. They are normal. They're fine. Milton almost dies in the Navy in World War II, and then he comes home safe. So she's like, great, all my praying is successful.
Yep.
Love that. And then Milton marries Tessie, his second cousin, and then they start having kids. And for Desdemona, it like starts all over again.
Yes.
And there's this theme. There's one quote, I should have written it down because it was so good. Cal says, these are the 2 themes of my life, sex and chance, or something along those lines. Yeah. And so, for example, Lefty and Desdemona only get married because when Lefty proposes to Desdemona, she thinks they're going to die in the fire of Smyrna. And so she says yes. And when Tessie tells Desdemona, I'm going to write to Milton in the Navy and tell him I want to marry him, I'm not going to marry this other guy that I was engaged to, she says, fine, you can have my blessing. Even though she's been dissuading them from being together for years because she thinks Milton's going to die in the Navy.
Yes.
And it's very lucky for him that he did not, because it really seemed like he was going to.
Yeah, I think things were not looking
Things were going bad for him. So it's only because of these like brief instances that Cal is even born at all.
Yeah.
You go through a lot of this book before Cal is even born, and yet you know a lot about Cal because he's writing about himself. And he's like, all of this information is information you need to understand me. And it's very clear that that's true. Yeah.
And as they go, like, the city is evolving as well. Like, first it starts to be, like, really big auto industry, and that's coming up. And then you have the speakeasies, and then you see, like, a lot of the racial divides in the city and the race riots. And so it's also it's also the story of how Detroit is changing as a city and influencing Milton's decision once we get there to move out to the suburbs.
Yes. You see this journey go very rapidly. Milton comes home from the Navy. He takes over Lefty's speakeasy diner. By now it's a diner. And you see them being really upwardly mobile, but then you see the part of town that the diner is in ceases to become an affluent area as Detroit ceases to be affluent.
Yes. Detroit is very much a character in this book.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Clearly, Jeffrey Eugenides has great love and reverence for the place where he came from.
And then eventually, during the race riots in the 60s, which is after Cal is born, and I'm kind of, jumping ahead in our timeline a little here, but the diner is, like,
burned.
Which, going back to the thread that Lefty and Desdemona were always very afraid of fire, Lefty had, like, a ton of fire insurance on the place.
He had 3 policies.
Which is, like, a crazy number of policies, apparently. Yeah. I know nothing about fire insurance.
I think you just need one. It's like insurance for anything else. Like, you just want one.
So, after that, Milton is able to kind of take what was the diner and put it into a hot dog business.
Yes, he has 66 Hercules hot dogs franchises.
Which I would love to eat one.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We never will.
You know what the title of this episode is going to be? Flop Dog Stands.
Flop Dog Stands.
Anyways.
Nothing to do with the themes of the book, but we're going to go for it anyway.
It's so fun. Anyways. And so that's kind of how the family starts to accumulate wealth, is as their business is evolving too, as Detroit is evolving.
And they move out to Grosse Pointe, outside of Detroit, very affluent. They go to private school because Milton doesn't want his kids to be bussed into the city. And when I say they, Cal Calliope has an older brother who is only referred to as Chapter 11.
Yes.
Which is very funny because you find out at the end, after, spoilers, Milton dies, which is something that I forgot happened, which is a crazy thing to not remember. Yeah. But he inherits the hot dog business and runs it into the ground in 5 years. So Cal calls him Chapter 11, which I think is funny.
Yes. So they move out to the suburbs, and we're kind of moving rapidly, but I think we're going to go back and talk about a lot of the theme stuff after we get through the plot.
Well, this is also where then most of the kind of generational themes, you've gotten the bulk of it.
Yep.
And then you're hearing much more about the sexuality themes and
Mm-hmm.
Cal specifically. All of these things are through lines through the entire book, but the second half, once they've reached Grosse Pointe, is much more personal to Cal.
Yes. And so this is when Cal starts to identify that they are not like other girls.
Yeah, and that starts when other girls at school are growing breasts and getting their periods and et cetera, et cetera. And none of that happens for Cal. Hilariously, they pretend to have their period to escape having to go to the gynecologist,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny because you can totally picture that being something a teenage girl might do, but you also know it's kind of staving off this inevitable
Discovery.
blow up. Yeah. It's
And-
like a very Chekhov's gun.
And we didn't even talk about why, they didn't know Cal was intersex earlier. It was because the same doctor that told their old Greek friend, the same doctor that told Desdemona, like, oh yeah, like intermarrying causes birth defects, was like their family physician, and he was just really old and like too old to be doing his job by the time Cal was born, and he like birthed Cal and was supposed to like check over to make sure like nothing was wrong with the baby, all that, and kind of did just very cursory like, yep, it's a girl, and like didn't
So normally
investigate further.
Yeah, so normally that people who have intersex genital characteristics, you find that out when they're born.
Yes.
Or not normally, a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically you do with people who have this 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency. I think those are all the words I didn't scroll back down to see.
That's okay.
And also then you are getting Cal's development romantically because they fall in love with their best friend who is a girl, and her name is the obscure object after obscure object of my desire.
Yes.
And so they have their relationship, which is actually very touching and sweet, but it is not to be, because then Cal's intersex genitals are discovered. And I'm using that word very specifically because that is the, identifier for what makes an intersex person. And then they are taken to a doctor in New York by their parents. He decides to go from being Calliope to Cal.
Runs away. And
like you said here, in a very Night Watchman-esque scene, which you're correct. They work in like a San Francisco strip club, basically. And then eventually go home. And they go home. Milton has died.
Yep.
In a car wreck. And that part of the book ends there on the day of Milton's funeral, when Desdemona has kind of dementia and comes clean about Lefty being her brother for the first time.
Yeah, because Cal is like, well, I was Calliope, but now I'm Cal, and kind of explains it a bit, and Desdemona's like, oh shit.
Oh, I knew something was going to happen. Yeah.
And honestly, that part surprised me. Like, obviously, for it being Cal's memoir, Cal would have had to know this. But I was still surprised that the knowledge came out of like the incest and the intermarrying.
Because Desdemona never wanted anyone to know.
No,
she would have done anything for people not to know. But in the end, when your mind's not always there, you can't.
The only person who knew was her cousin, Lena, because when they came.
Because she knew both of them beforehand.
Yeah, and when she came, Lefty was like, you'll meet my wife. Like, Lena was like, oh my God, it's Desdemona. And then she was like, never speak of this again. And Lena actually had been in relationships with a lot of women. So it was kind of this whole
secret for secret
type of thing.
There we go.
Towards the end, one of the other scenes that like really stuck with me and gave me pause, not in the same good, exciting way, but this was back in the era where the term hermaphrodite was used quite commonly.
Yes.
Which is not a term that's acceptable now to describe intersex or people who are intersex. But Cal was looking this up and like learning what it meant. And the synonym they come across was monster.
Oh my gosh. That was such a sad scene.
That made me so upset. Like this little 14-year-old, like that is how they're identifying themselves now.
And all of the scenes in that doctor's office in New York are so awful because it's some sort of hack from the 70s. And when they are like obviously making great strides in research about sexuality, but they're not reaching correct conclusions. They're basically playing God with people.
Yeah. And they were going to do, and like why Cal runs away is they were going to do like a bunch of surgeries and like all of this stuff.
Yeah. They were basically going to, this is one of the things that you hear a lot of the time is a lot of percentage of intersex people are quote unquote girls born that have clitorises that are too big. So essentially what they wanted to do was just surgery to reduce that in size, even though that could result in a complete lack of sexual sensation. And they're just like, it's more important to be normal.
Yeah.
And between that, knowing that all this surgery is happening, no one will explain to Cal what's going on, and finding out that the synonym for her is monster, that's when Calliope becomes Cal, and he runs away.
And in addition, Cal sees on the doctor's desk, like, they have basically been saying the entire time, like, all the doctors, oh, like, you're a girl, you're a girl, you're a girl. And then Cal finds a report that, like, actually no.
Because Cal has XY chromosomes.
Yes.
And they just have ambiguous genitalia of parts of both genders.
There was a lot of interesting conversations about, like, nature versus nurture. And I say interesting because it's, like, you know, seeing how it was talked about back in 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Of, like, oh, well, Cal was raised a girl. Obviously, that's going to rule out. And I don't know. It's just very interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that I came to in this book, having read it before, the thing that I always was never super convinced about, and this is like an evolution of understanding that I have from growing older from when I last read this book, and also we have an evolved conversation and understanding of gender, of physical sex, and then gender identity, is when I first read this book, there's this one quote on page 479 that Cal says, which is, I never felt out of place being a girl. I still don't feel entirely at home among men. And so therefore I was like, well, then why? I don't understand why Cal is living as a man then. And I felt like, to me in my head when I read this before, that was like a shortcoming on like Jeffrey Eugenides' part.
Yeah.
That I was like, you just didn't completely wrap your head around what this means. But now, having read it again, I expected to frankly feel the same thing and discuss it on the podcast. But now I understand, first of all, that one, just off the top of my head, like hitting puberty and then having your body change can do a lot to your gender identity and your perception of yourself.
Absolutely.
But also the question of whether or not Cal is like quote unquote a boy or a girl is not an important question in this book. It's not relevant. Yeah. The question is, who is Cal and where did they come from?
Yeah.
What of all of the experiences that make up them? One of them is the experience of finding out at the age of 14 that you're intersex. One is that you have this Greek American background. One is falling in love with a girl at your school.
Yep.
All of these different things. So
all of these moments.
It doesn't really matter if Cal is 100% a man or 100% a woman or something in the middle because of their gender identity.
Yeah, that's not what this book is trying to answer.
Yeah. So I am glad that we read this again so I could kind of settle that thing in my head that I felt unsettled about thinking about this book. That I was like, that book is so good, except for this one thing. But now I feel like the problem wasn't the book. The problem was that I had a limited understanding approaching it.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that's what's important about going back and rereading books is that your perspective evolves as you have different life experiences.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
This book to me, I loved it. I really did. It kind of struck me as almost similar to Pachinko. As I said at the beginning, it was our other mammoth generational story. This one, I do think it dragged on a little long at points. I liked this better than Pachinko because I feel like each of the characters, I understood why they were in the story and the role they played. Even the minor ones. Whereas Pachinko, I remember saying, like, towards the end, I don't know why, like...
You could cut a couple of these.
I'm like, you can cut a couple of these stories. I don't know why they have the spotlight. I didn't feel that was a shortcoming here, and I think that is a big feat.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of characters. They're all pretty sufficiently weighted, I think, in terms of importance. And it also feels real. Like, for example, the character of Lena, who's Lefty and Desdemona's cousin, you see her a lot during their sections and not that much later.
Yeah.
And that's true in real life. Like, your grandchildren aren't going to be close to all of the people that you are close to.
Exactly.
I also felt like it is long. It's not like Luminaries long. It's like 500 pages or so. But I also felt like it was very readable. Like, I think for how long it is, you flip through it. And I think that's because the prose is so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And Eugenides, I wrote here, like, he really hits you with it immediately straight out of the gate.
Absolutely.
Like we said last week, like, oh, this is like elevated, accessible prose talking about Under the Udala Trees. This is like impressing awards committees stuff.
Yes.
It's big words, it's fancy things, it's, you know, tricks that he clearly learned doing his master's degree. And it really works for me. And I think it's really impressive.
And that's a testament to Cal as a narrator, too. Cal is a phenomenal narrator.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey's ability to kind of like switch between the omniscient of like knowing all this stuff that happened with the grandparents to like Cal's life as a teenager, like excellent.
Yeah.
The only question I had was every once in a while the narrator would refer to Calliope in the third person, but not all the time.
I don't know. Maybe it was like a royal we, like looking down from above.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a question mark for me. It didn't really inhibit my reading experience. I was wondering if you had thought anything of it, but if not, I'm fine to drop that.
Yeah, not really. I don't know. I think it's just that he goes to great lengths to present this as a memoir and to connect everything back to Cal, because the theme is all of these things have come together to result in the person that Cal is.
And you know what? I wish I had written down a specific mention of like when that was, because maybe it was at a time when Cal was feeling very disconnected with Calliope as a girl.
That's true.
It could have been something like that, and I just didn't pick up on the specific moments.
Yeah, because like I said, you get these flashes throughout the book of, well, there are scenes of like Cal in Berlin going on dates with this woman, Julie, and we can talk about that in a second. But also just the knowledge of that the writer of Middlesex, quote unquote, is Cal as a 40-year-old.
Yep.
Referencing, you know, this is what was going through my mind when I was a girl, which is what he says like very explicitly.
Yeah.
So that perspective is clear. And I think it could get all really jumbled with all of these different versions of Cal and Calliope and whatever, all the different generations of the family. But it doesn't. It stays really clear, which I think is hard to do.
Yeah.
And here, while we're on the topic, before we stray too far away from it, I really liked the narrative with Julie Kikuchi, who is the woman that Cal is dating in the future. Mm-hmm. This is a really simple arc. It's not nearly as developed as everything else, and I'm sure that's by design.
Yeah, I don't think it needed to be at all.
No, but it's just like this really simple story of Cal is 40, still not really letting anyone in romantically or sexually, is not comfortable being sexual with people. Mm-hmm. And then that's contrasted with what you find out later are early sexual experiences that Cal had with the obscure object when they were teenagers.
Yep.
And how easy and comfortable those felt.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get this little arcing narrative of Cal meeting Julie and really liking her, going on a few dates, getting afraid to go any further and just dropping it, and then eventually finding the strength to come back to her and tell her the truth about who he is, and they sleep together.
Yeah.
And it's really lovely, and you don't get any implication that it's anything more than a positive start of something, or even if it ended there, it could still be a positive memory for Cal.
I think it was, no matter what, I think it was a positive start for Cal getting comfortable.
Exactly.
So, and more accepting of themselves.
Even if that future wasn't with Julie or not, that was still like a net positive. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing, you know, good things are in the future.
Yes.
Which is what you want to hear for Cal after the last, like, the final pages of the book are them standing in the doorway of their house. Their house is called Middlesex, which is what the title of the book refers to, but obviously it's obviously play on words. You don't need me to tell you how. Standing in the doorway to make sure Milton's spirit doesn't come back into the house.
Yes. Which is something they have like a man of the family do.
Yeah. And Cal is like, well, now I qualify. Mm-hmm. So you see all of this stuff in the future, like knowing it's coming, all these hints that Cal has dropped throughout the book about their past, but you feel sad and hopeful for the future, which I think is what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it ended on the best note it could have,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of different ways. And I really liked this.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was thematically really great. I think it tells a story that you don't often hear. Like, it's not common to hear, even in 2025, it's not common to hear stories of people who are intersex.
No. Yeah.
I think this is an important one and an important Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah, and just very impressive from a craft perspective.
Oh, incredibly impressive.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say, historical accuracy?
Let's do it. So, for historical accuracy, I have kind of two distinct sections to talk about that don't overlap at all.
And let me just say, for our audience members who can't see our script, there are like blocks of text here. So I'm just going to put my phone down and let Grace yap.
I went crazy. So, and I really could have gone into it more because I'm not even really going to talk about like the disintegration of Detroit.
Okay.
And we talked about how important that was, but I was just like, it's too much.
It's too much.
People, if you live in America, I feel like you have at least like a surface level understanding of what happened to Detroit.
Yes.
So there's more that I could say about it, but we're going to talk about the burning of Smyrna and the overall intersex movement.
Okay.
So let's start with Smyrna because that comes chronologically first. So Smyrna is a city in what is now Turkey, but it was founded as Smyrna when it was still, that land was part of the Greek Empire.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of back and forth of that area. So the burning of Smyrna happened from September 13th to September 22nd of 1922. And that was kind of the end point of the Greco-Turkish War. You get a little bit in the narrative about how that has been going on from Desdemona and Lefty. When they start the book, they're in their village, Bithynios,
yes,
in what is now Turkey, but they are obviously Greek. So the war, it started in the aftermath of World War I. The Ottoman Empire was on the losing side of World War I, and there was a plan by like the British mostly to divvy up the land of the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
And they gave Smyrna and a lot of the other area around Smyrna to Greece. So in 1919, the Greeks marched in to take Smyrna.
Okay.
So at the whole point of like the beginning of the book up until the burning, Greece has Smyrna. And then while Lefty and Desdemona are there as refugees trying to escape this obviously super war-torn country that they live in and get to America where their cousin Lena is, they get to Smyrna and then the Turks come in and they set Smyrna on fire.
Okay.
Basically the whole city burns down except for the much smaller areas where the Jewish people live. And yeah, that doesn't get burned down.
Okay.
But and then the Muslim quarters don't get burnt down either. The Greek and Armenian sections of the city, which are the biggest ones, get burned completely to the ground. An important element to this is the Greeks and the Armenians are mainly Christians, and the Turks are mainly Muslim.
Okay.
So that's a big conflict there. There's really no distinct sense of how many people died in Smyrna. The ranges are insane. The conservative estimate is 10,000 people. The liberal estimate is 150,000 people.
Holy shit.
So no one really knows. Maybe this is due to the large numbers of refugees who don't normally live in that city, so it's harder to tell. I don't know. So
it could also be like a lot of records were lost.
There's like a lot of conflicting opinions. People don't really know. And also there is still debate on who set the fires.
Okay.
And we see this mentioned briefly in the book.
I think I remember that.
Yes. So a lot of people say that the Turks started the fire. They come into the city, and that seems to hold up with some evidence, such as it is only the Greek and Armenian sections of the city that burned down. And then also third-party eyewitnesses, in this case, Americans and French who were living in the city at the time, say that they saw Turkish soldiers setting the fires.
Oh, okay.
The Turks maintain that the Greeks and Armenians set the fires themselves so that, like, the Turks could not have their city.
Okay.
So both of these things, there's conflicting information. Some people say, like, the French and the Americans are kind of neutral third-party observers. Some people note, well, the French and the Americans are Christians. So, it's hard to tell. But basically, ever since then, that city has been Turkish. It is firmly in what is called Turkey modern day. And the city since 1930 has been called Izmir. Okay. So it is no longer called Smyrna. There is no Smyrna. Funnily enough, there are a lot of cities in the American South called Smyrna.
New Smyrna Beach in Florida?
New Smyrna Beach in Florida is represented in the book. But also, if you Google Smyrna fire, the first thing that comes up is the Wikipedia page about the burning of Smyrna. And then the second thing that comes up is the fire department for Smyrna, Tennessee.
Yes, I did, because I remember Googling it. Yeah. I did see that.
So I hope those gentlemen in Smyrna, Tennessee are doing great work, as are the gentlemen in Smyrna, Delaware.
Yes.
Great work. So yes, that is what I have about Smyrna. I just feel like that is such important context for the rest of the book. Yeah,
that was kind of the kickoff point for them coming to America and all of this.
And again, like, I didn't really know anything about it.
No, I didn't either.
I'm happy to learn.
As I was reading it, like, kind of right, you always wonder sometimes, like, okay, like, how much is, exaggerated for historical fiction? And then the more I read, I'm like, this has to be, like, very, very rooted in fact.
Yeah. Well, then we also see, we didn't even mention this because it's unrelated to the rest of the Stephanides family narrative, but it was so visceral that the doctor who delivers Cal and doesn't recognize that they're intersex, that doctor lived in Smyrna, is Armenian, settled in Smyrna, has a wife, has 4 children. He goes out during the fire to tend to someone, and then he comes back and his whole family has been murdered by the Turks. Mm-hmm. And that's why he comes to America in the first place, because he's like, I need to, like, never step foot anywhere in Turkey ever again.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to completely, that
was heartbreaking.
Crazy. So now let's get into intersex.
Yes.
So, like we said, the book uses the term hermaphrodite, not exclusively. Mm-hmm. The term intersex does appear. The Intersex Society of North America seems to be like a big authority on a lot of intersex issues. And Cal mentions briefly being a member.
Yes.
It uses both words, and I'll get into why, because that was on purpose on the part of Jeffrey Eugenides. But the term intersex was coined in 1915, actually by a zoologist.
Okay.
Because this is very much like rooted in biology. It's not like a human exclusive thing. And that refers to anyone that has ambiguous sex characteristics. Mm-hmm. And he suggested this zoologist, specifically because the term hermaphrodite implies that you have 2 complete and full sets of genitals.
Okay.
But intersex more accurately summarizes most intersex people, which is having ambiguous genitalia.
Okay.
And not just like you have both things going on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
After that period, a lot of medical intervention is really focused on quote unquote fixing ambiguous genitalia. Mm-hmm. A lot of times that would involve basically picking a gender for someone. And a lot of times that gender would be female, just because vaginal reconstruction came along like much quicker. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times this happens before the age of 2.
Wow.
It was the scientific opinion that it was better to undergo these surgeries before you could remember it. We talked a lot about nature versus nurture as a theme of the book gender-wise. And there was a belief that if you were brought up as one gender and you never knew that you were intersex, it would never be a problem. But intersex individuals really do advocate against this. They think that it's the right of the intersex person to consent to any surgical intervention they may or may not want, which I completely agree with.
Absolutely.
And also that you should know what your own gender identity is as an adult before you make those decisions. Because, as we hopefully all know, your internal gender identity and how you view yourself does not always correlate to your physical sex characteristics.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, not to cut you off. And as is mentioned in the book, like with Cal, like it could leave without any sensation.
Yes.
Which is also a risk like an adult should consider.
Yes. So I also have noted here an important figure in the intersex movement is a woman named Christiane Bohling in Germany in the late to mid 2000s. She was the first intersex person to win a court settlement against doctors who had removed, she had a complete set of internal female reproductive organs, ovaries, uterus, fallopian tubes, and doctors removed them without her knowing that they were even there. To try and correct, quote unquote, her ambiguous genitalia. But she has always, even though she was raised as a boy, has always identified as a woman and considered herself a woman. So she won a court case against those doctors in Germany, which is, again, kind of fairly recent.
Yeah, very recent.
And then also, this is kind of random, but I super love it. The first country to outlaw, quote, non-medically necessary sexual surgical intervention without consent on children was Malta. So they passed a law against that in 2015. So if you have a child born with ambiguous genitalia in Malta, then that child has the opportunity to grow up and make their own decisions about what they want to happen to their body. Yeah, which is great.
That is really great.
I don't know what kind of national conversation was happening in Malta that resulted in that, but I'm for it. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about just briefly was how the intersex community views this book. This is not really something that we've come across this season so far.
Yeah.
But Jeffrey Eugenides as an author, to my knowledge at least, from what he said, is not a member of the LGBT community. He has definitely emphatically stated that he is not intersex.
Okay.
Because of all these other similarities that he has with Cal. He's like, I basically can't convince people that I'm not. He's like, I just wanted to write about this. So I wondered how the intersex community feels about this book, because I think it is and remains the most prominent literary example of an intersex character. And I think that they are pretty widely supportive of the book, and mainly how it highlights the intersex issue and how it educates people that it even exists. There are a few understandable problems that they have with the book, and these don't seem to be blanket problems, but that they make decent enough appearances in the statements that I read. One is that Cal's specific intersex history stems from an incestuous family history, which I think is a negative stereotype that they want to fight against, which makes sense. Like I said earlier, there are a ton of different ways and a ton of different reasons that people can be intersex. Specifically, 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency syndrome stems a lot from inbred communities. There are many other types that do not. But apparently Jeffrey Eugenides was thinking of writing a much more straightforward memoir before they came across 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency and realized they had this opportunity to create this family epic. So that was created with that in mind. And then the other is the use of the word hermaphrodite, which is frowned upon when talking to intersex people. What Jeffrey Eugenides had to say about that. Thank God he was in Oprah's book club, because he did so many Q&As and stuff for that.
I can imagine.
He said when people wrote into him and said why would you use this word? He says, you are completely correct. I always use the word intersex when talking to or about real intersex people. So when speaking to and about intersex people, that is the word that Jeffrey Eugenides uses, intersex, but he wanted to use the word hermaphrodite in the book, specifically to reference its Greek origin. And the myth of hermaphroditus is where that word comes from.
And I'm sure it was also more common at that time period, too, to an extent.
Not amongst the intersex community, but amongst, other lay people.
Yeah.
And I know I've been talking for a long time. This is my last thing. I found a piece on the 20th anniversary of Middlesex, which was published in a magazine called Our Detroit, Our with an H, about the legacy of Middlesex and how it impacts the city of Detroit. And in that piece, it talks about how far the understanding of intersex people has come, and it has this quote that I really like. In order to push us toward a place of more nuanced, enlightened understanding, these works must necessarily set us on a path where, after years of reflection, we look back and can see more clearly their occasional awkwardness, their moments of naivete, their blind spots.
And I think that's the perfect way to look at most books in general. They're a product of their time.
And so to me, that's great. It's saying this book did a lot in its time, and hopefully we will always be able to build more onto our understanding that we had then.
Yes, absolutely.
And I hope in 50 years, we have another book with an intersex main character that's even better and even more nuanced than this one is.
Absolutely.
I would want, and I think Jeffrey Eugenides would want, us to keep growing and learning and adapting our understanding. So this is a nice note to end on to maybe move into our calculator.
Yes, our categories are historical accuracy, originality, characters, prose, and vibes. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go 5 historical accuracy, 5 originality, 5 characters, 5 prose, and vibes 4.5. I know. I'm making you do this spreadsheet and I'm making you put in a decimal. Just because I thought there was points where it felt a little bit long. But overall, what is that?
That's a 4.9.
Wow, and I'd given it a 4.75 on Storygraph, which I would have gone closer to a 5 if Storygraph allowed me to. That's definitely a 5.
For me, it's straight vibes across the board.
Wow.
Yeah. Not to be hyperbolic, I do think if I had to pick my 10 favorite books of all time, this would be one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And that actually isn't hyperbolic because it is just literally true. I just love this book. It has been a 5 for me every single time I've read it, and it will continue to be a 5 for me. It's my favorite book that we've read so far this season.
And when we have a bonus episode, that's just our top 10 books of all time.
Oh my gosh, we got to start working on that now because that is a hard list to put together.
All right, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are reading a book that is mercifully just a little bit shorter, The House of Doors by Tan Tuan Eng.
This is not one I've read before, but I do have a hardback copy from when we went to McKay's used bookstore.
What a wonderful place. I love it as much as Jeffrey Eugenides loves Detroit.
So true. And you know what else I love? Following our podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @5orflop_pod.
Don't forget, now that we're 2/3 of the way through the season, to check out what books are to come on our Storygraph reading challenge. And if there's any books you think are missing from that list, you can fill out the recommendation form in the bios of any of our social medias.
Or you can shoot us an email, 5orfloppodcast@gmail.com. But until we meet again,
happy reading!
Bye!